leads the Democrats there to yell and scream and holler and I'll raise taxes on the rich. But they don't know straight up from sickle. They really don't. They don't know the tax codes. They don't know what happens. They don't know the facts.
Welcome to FreedomFest TV, part of the Ultimate Summit for Liberty. I'm your host, Heather Wagenhals, and I have the man, the myth, the legend in economics, Art Laffer. Welcome to the broadcast, Art.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure being with you.
It's a pleasure to have you. You know, I learned all I needed to know about economics between you, Ben Stein, and Ferris Bueller.
But that was fun, wasn't it?
Right?
I mean, I'm watching the film there way back in the day, and then, what? That one girl drooling on the desk, you remember that? Oh, and that's so typical of my students. When I lectured and taught, they all just drooled, they bored, they just joking.
I know, and now they're going, man, I wish I would have listened to that guy. Now they see you on TV, they're like, oh my gosh, there he is. So you're here again. What brings you back to FreedomFest?
Well, I'm going to be debating a Lanny Ebbetstein on raising taxes on the rich, so we'll be doing that. And obviously, I don't think we should raise taxes on the rich. Mm-hmm. He thinks we should. Wrong.
Right.
Wrong. But it'll be fun. He's a good guy and a nice person, and it should be a fun debate.
And I'm looking forward to it. Now, yesterday, it's losing track of time, yesterday I moderated a panel on tax, speaking of which, and Grover Norquist had some really great comments, and he was reflecting on the difference between flat taxes and progressive taxes, and there's this optimal tax rate that everybody's trying to come up with. What are your thoughts?
Well, I did Jerry Brown's flat tax when he ran for president in 1992. We got rid of all federal taxes, all of them. Well, except for one little group called sin taxes. And the reason we didn't get rid of them, their purpose is not so much to raise revenues, it's to change behavior. I jokingly say we Americans don't like drunk people smoking while we shoot each other. Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. But we replaced all federal taxes, all of them. The income tax, capital gains tax, the unearned income tax, the payroll tax, employer-employee, Medicare and Medicaid, all the excise taxes, tariffs, everything, and had two flat rate taxes. One on business net sales and one on personal unadjusted gross income. No deductions, no exemptions, no exclusions. From the first dollar to the last dollar, the same rate. And it came out, I think it came out 11.85% with static revenue neutral. I rounded it up to 12 and Jerry rounded it up to 13. And it was a Democratic primary against that lipsucker from Hope, Arkansas. Remember Bill Clinton? We were 8th in the race when we started. We ended up 2nd in the race. We had Clinton on the ropes. We had him done. We were going to win with the flat tax. And then, of course, Jerry Brown announces his choice of Vice President Jesse Jackson. But so we lost in California and New York. But we really came in second. It's the right way to go. Just all taxes flat. All taxes are bad, but some are worse than others.
Right.
And what you want to do is collect your taxes in the least damaging fashion.
Right.
And spend it in the most beneficial fashion, and then stop. You know, spending is okay up to a point, and then no more.
Right. And I think that balances well with the idea of government's specific functions, and it needs to be limited to those functions.
Thank you. That's all. And you know, government shouldn't be getting into making yachts. Government shouldn't be into growing hamburgers. I mean, you know, government should be post office, legal system, roads, highways, defense, schools maybe, and all of that.
Public safety. Protection.
But that's it. And then once you get that point, the government's the right size.
So how do you defend that position when other people are saying, oh, well, you know, be punitive to the rich. You know, they can afford it. We just need to take from the rich.
Well, because they don't pay those taxes, frankly. They're richer than you are and they're richer than I am. They can hire lawyers, accountants, deferred income specialists, favor grabbers, lobbyists. When you see a group of people hanging with Obama, don't think it's street people trying to explain to them what it's like being poor. These are people from Goldman Sachs who are trying to get special favors so they can take it back to their company. And they have the money. They can buy more politicians than you and I can. So if you have a low-rate, broad-based, flat tax, there'll be no need to worry about that. They pay their fair share. As it is now, you'll see when I start off, and a man I admire very much, especially for his honesty, is Warren Buffett. But Warren Buffett in 2010 made a little less than $12 billion, and he paid a little less than $7 million in taxes. 0.06% of his income.
That's a fraction.
Yeah, but much less than tax, because these are preferred items and aren't taxable. Increases in unrealized capital gains are not taxable. Charitable gifts are not taxable. So we've got all these tax shelters that he does and he uses quite legally, quite fairly, and does a great job doing it, and all the rest of them do too. So if you want to collect their money, you get rid of all the loopholes, you have a low-rate, broad-based flat tax, and bam, you'll get the money.
And that's what makes sense. So where is the disconnect between the talking heads that say that flat tax aren't good and the American people that keep voting for these policies that for some reason they're not understanding? Where's the disconnect?
Well, the disconnect is these people don't understand how the rich can change policies. You know, it's hard to imagine what it's like being a billionaire if you're only making $150,000 a year.
Right.
And so these people have their lawyers, their account, all this stuff, and the political apparatus and all that. I mean, when Obama or Biden go to a big fundraiser out in Long Island, you know, it's not street people there.
Right.
In the audience, and they look for special favors and stuff, and they get them. And you know, then it means that the poor people can never make enough to get to be rich, and it becomes a block. It becomes a poverty trap, and that's not the way we want it. By the way, they would be better off too if we had a low-rate, broad-based flat tax. But
well, they wouldn't have to hire a litany of accountants to figure it all out.
Exactly, and they would be, and they believe. I mean, they're really good people. Rich people are good people, and they're fine people, but they believe in paying their fair share, but not more. It's their money. They earned it. They are the ones. I mean, Elon Musk, he's developed Tesla, not you and me.
Right.
You know, and he deserves the money, and he doesn't mind paying his fair share of taxes. He just doesn't want to pay way more and be gouged.
Right.
No one does, and that's why we have a flat tax. We should have.
Right. So how do we communicate how the low-income person can benefit from a flat tax? Because we'll actually get more out of the rich.
Well, and I don't know if a low-income person really cares about it, but let's say they did, is explain to them what really happens, not what hypothetically. They think if you raise tax rates, you get more from the rich. You don't. You get less. I mean, simple as that. They just shelter more of their income.
Right.
And then you don't have their money, and you don't have their services being used to produce goods and services. It's too bad.
Right.
But, you know, people deserve the governments they get. And if you're silly enough to vote for these guys, God bless you, the earth they are scorching is yours too.
Right.
And that's, you have to hope, just hope beyond hope, that democracy will lead to intelligent voting. But, you know, democracy often is two wolves and a lamb voting on what's for supper.
Right.
Democracy, if you want the best argument against democracy, talk to an average voter for 5 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
But you know, we need to have an educated electorate to have democracy work, and especially on the tax code stuff, because people have no idea the intricacies of the tax codes.
Right, and I don't like. My biggest issue are the politicians that say taxes for thee, but not for me, and they position it in a way that, oh, look what happens to these greedy people. And they're not.
They're not.
They're not.
They're just defending their income like you would defend your income.
Right.
Except they're successful.
Exactly, because they have paid professionals to do that, and the average person can't.
Morgenthau in 1939 hired all these tax people for the IRS, and he got them all. He trained them all in 2 years, and he said finally he had this really elite core of IRS professionals. The private sector came in and hired them away at 10, 20 times the salary they were making at the IRS to turn them around and file their tax returns so they didn't have to pay. That's what markets do. Mm-hmm. And do you blame the rich guy for hiring the IRS agents to help him or her? No, of course not.
Why would you?
Why would you? And you know, these people have all these loopholes, gifts, etc. And I'm going to go through the one with Warren Buffett today in my discussion, and I'll just show it. And by the way, he's wonderful. I'm not criticizing him for using tax loopholes. I'm really not. I am praising him to the ceiling for being the most honest rich person to tell us actually how he files his tax returns. Now, I know that because I'm a tax professional, but other people don't. And he earned a little less than $12 billion, and he paid a little less than $7 million in taxes.
Well, and you know that's pretty interesting considering people are, you know, advocating for more. And you're right. When they say, oh, well, that you should just pay more, they're just going to figure out how to stash more.
They're going to raise tax rates on things they don't report.
So it sounds good, It
Well, it
feels
sounds good,
limited.
and it leads the Democrats there to yell
Yeah.
and scream and holler and I'll raise taxes on the rich. Biden and that Elizabeth Warren person. Oh, ooh, just scary. And Bernie Sanders, I mean, crazy. But they don't know straight up from sick 'em. They really don't. They don't know the tax codes. They don't know what happens. They don't know the facts. You know,
Right.
this is not about opinions. This is about facts, not how you feel.
Right.
And the facts are very clear. When you raise taxes on the rich, when you raise tax rates on the rich, the economy underperforms. All right, the rich get hurt, that's true, but the poor get hurt more.
Right.
And then lastly, they don't raise revenues. But other than that, it's really smart. Just
Well,
joking.
Right. So how do we? How does an individual who's trying to argue for flat taxes and the reduction of taxes work against those folks where they talk about the negative ramifications of what it is? Because everybody's trying to scare everybody. So,
Well, they
so
are.
what's a
and
tool
that's how
that
they get
we can
elected.
use?
Well, truth. I mean, my book, Taxes Have Consequences, outlines it's the whole history of the U.S. income tax from 1913 to the present. It's called Taxes Have Consequences. My co-authors are Gene Sinkfield, PhD, and Brian Dimitrovic, PhD historian. And it's got it, all the evidence is right there. What happens when you do raise taxes on the rich? We know what happens when you lower taxes on the rich. The economy booms, tax revenues go up, and the poor get much better jobs, output, employment, production. They're much benefiting. The rich and the poor are not enemies.
Right.
They work together. You know, without rich people, I mean, the poor people would never have jobs. I mean, these are the inventors, the creators. These are the people who made America great. The dream in America has never been to make the rich poor. The dream in America is always to make the poor richer.
Right. To
But
elevate.
To elevate the poor, not go after the rich. And these people who are attacking the rich are attacking everything we have in society. And it's just wrong. And, you know, I tell people that, but if they don't believe me, that's their problem.
Well, and Rand prophesized it really well in Atlas Shrugged.
Yeah, she did. And, you know, it's a common element. And whenever you allow the democracy to get to the point where you can have people misleading and lying and not telling the truth, you're going to get a real problem. You need to have voters who are clear-eyed and warm-hearted. Warm-hearted is very, very important. But clear-eyed is equally as important. Knowing what actually happens.
Right.
That's what's really important. Then, once you know what actually happens, then you can do what should happen.
Right.
And then you can construct tax codes to really help the poor, the minorities, the disenfranchised. The blacks in the inner cities of the U.S. have not shared in our prosperity. Why? Because there's a poverty trap. Every time they earn a little bit more money, they get all the welfare payments taken away from them, and it's not worth it to make more money.
Right.
And that's happened. The minimum wage, I used to call it the Minority Teenage Unemployment Act, because it prohibits these kids from ever getting their first job. If they don't get their first job, they never earn the requisite skills to working in the labor force. Then they become permanently unemployed. Then they become hostile. You have to spend a fortune to protect yourself from them. That's why I wrote enterprise zones in the late 70s, in the early 70s, and why I like a low-rate, broad-based flat tax, because it will allow them to share in the prosperity that we've all enjoyed.
Right.
And why not? And then you get these other people coming who are basically misleading them and selling them snake oil. You know, like Elizabeth Warren, like Bernie Sanders, like Joe Biden.
Right.
Who's, we got to raise tax, make them pay their fair share. Come on.
Yes. And Bernie likes to make it a moral issue. And nobody wants to be amoral or immoral. So
Except Bernie.
Yeah.
No, that's right. And that the most amoral act a government can ever perpetrate on its citizenry is to enact policies that have the effect of destroying the production base upon which all beneficence ultimately flows. That is the immoral act. The immoral act is the guy who prohibits our economy from reaching the heights it can reach. You know, it's just tragic what they've done to our country. And hopefully in 2024 we'll take it back from them.
Yes.
We'll
Well,
see. You know, and by the way, if we don't, it's not my problem. I try to lecture as best I
yeah,
can.
you're doing your best.
And
to
I worked
convince
with all of
people.
them back. I was, you know, George Shultz's right-hand person in 1970 when he was in the, you know, I was the chief economist in the White House back in 1970 with George Shultz. He was really the chief. I was his deputy right-hand. And all the way, I've been going to the Oval Office now for well over 50 years. And, you know, I've been trying to do my part to tell you guys how to run it to make it work. And, you know, sometimes you win and sometimes you lose.
Well, you have a great audience here at FreedomFest.
Well, I won with Reagan. I won with a bunch of others as well. Jerry Brown, I won. But when we didn't win that race, but Clinton was a damn good president. I voted for Bill Clinton twice. I thought he was terrific. Trump was great. I mean, you know, I'm a Reagan Republican, a Kennedy Democrat. I thought Trump was great. I thought Clinton did a good job on cutting taxes, getting the growth going. It's a bipartisan thing. I love anyone who wants low-rate taxes, broad-based taxes. Let's get the economy flying.
If folks want to find out more about you, where do they go?
I have a center called the Laffer Center, which is the, you can look it up on the internet. It's 501c3. They can get all the stuff there at the Laffer Center. Thank you, everybody. It's fun.
It's so
Again,
great.
fun.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Art Laffer, everyone. Heather Wagenhals. And we'll be back with more right after this.